What's up, guys? This is Chaz and Charlie, and today I want to discuss changing your mindset about weed addiction. So chances are, if you're watching this video, you probably have an issue with weed addiction. That's why you have clicked this video. Or if maybe you just think we're talking about weed and you don't realize that you have an addiction. So that's the first step about changing our mindset. We have to admit to ourselves that we have an issue with addiction. And weed is such a funny drug, no pun intended, because it's on the lower scale of all drugs, including alcohol. So many people won't actually come to grips with the fact that they have an issue with addiction, because weed doesn't carry the same stigma as hard drugs such as pills and powder substances and heroin and even alcohol. We a lot of times don't want to admit that we have an issue. We'll say that I can quit anytime I want to, or it's not a big deal. You can go 20, 25 years smoking weed and not have any apparent issues. Whereas chances are, if you're like on cocaine for 5 to 10 years, it's a great chance you will die in those 5 years. Whereas weed is not like that. You can do it for such a long period of time and not have any apparent issues. So therefore, people won't think they actually have an issue with addiction. But if you smoke weed every day, if you need weed every day, you have an issue with addiction. So the first step about changing our mindset is admitting that we have an issue. So once we do that, we can come to grips with it, accept it, and figure out how we're going to change our mind to overcome this addiction. Now, if we do have any issue with addiction, whether it's weed or alcohol or work or food, we do have a personality trait that we can easily fall prey to addiction of any kind. If we don't have weed, we'll just try to replace it with something else. So I think a good thing to do is when you're trying to quit weed or stop the cycle of addiction, is try to replace it with something. When we just quit weed without going to an alternative, we'll feel lost and we'll not know what to do with our bottled energy, our bottled habit of doing this thing we're used to doing every day. So the easier option to not get bored with life or feel like you're losing something is to replace addiction for a healthier addiction. But let's quickly go back to our mindset. A lot of times people who smoke weed will say, I smoke weed because I like the weed makes me feel. And that's very true. I think with any addiction, any vice, you like how it makes you feel. That's the point of you doing it. But I think we sometimes think, that we're going to one day just develop a distaste for our vice. And in a lot of cases, especially with weed, where, okay, if you're on a hard drug, you may know that, your life is really at rock bottom. Your health is bad. You lost your job. You lost your loved ones. You lost your family. There's a lot of reason to quit. But with weed, you can smoke weed all the time, every day, all day, and not have these obvious effects. And you just kind of go with, it makes me feel good. So it may be harder to quit because, you're used to the feeling that weed gives you. And you're not sick, you're not in pain. So you do have to change your mindset, your mental state, to want to quit. And it does take practice. It does take persistence. It does take consistency. So back to the idea of trading addiction out for an addiction. And it can differ from person to person. You may say that, I want to quit today. I don't have a addiction that I want to, or something that I want to trade it out for. That's fine. It's not a rush. Don't use that as a reason that you can't quit. But it is a mental state, and it is something that you have to be persistent in doing. You have to basically retrain your brain. And if you do something for, they say, about 30 days, you pretty much get used to the new habit. So we put the weed down. And if you can go one day without smoking, you can go 30 days without smoking. If you can go 30 days without smoking, you can go forever without smoking. Now, people will say weed isn't addictive because there's no harsh withdrawal effects. Now, I don't agree that that's the only thing that classifies addiction, because we have things like porn, like gambling, like eating, like shopping. None of these things actually have physical withdrawal effects, but that doesn't mean that they're not addictive to people. But the good thing about that, it'll be much easier to quit than other drugs because you don't have those extreme physical withdrawal effects. Now, there are some. I'm not going to say there's not. You do have things like loss of sleep, loss of appetite. I've heard you have sometimes crazy dreams if you do sleep. You're probably a lot more moody, a lot more agitated. So, there are some physical effects, but they're not severe. You can quickly get over them within 30 days. So, take it day by day. Take it day by day. And each day, although it may seem hard, the first week is going to be hard. The first week is going to be hard. So, if you do, also say don't, if you happen to slip up while you're quitting, it's no big deal. Don't sit in the disappointment of relapsing. It's normal. It's easy to do. You just realize how you relapse and try not to make that same mistake. And we have to remember with weed, it is all mental. It's not really physical. It is a mental thing. And because it's really a mental drug, it changes how you feel mentally. It's usually if you're depressed, if you're just sad about something, you smoke weed to help you get unsad or undepressed. So we do have to change our mental state and learn how to control our dopamine, control our endorphins on our own. Again, we have to change our mindset. Like I said, back to people saying that, I like how it makes me feel. It makes me feel good. Okay, why don't you feel good anyway? You don't just wake up and be like, I don't feel good, and I don't have a clue on why I feel this way. There's a reason. In most cases, you do have clinical depression, which they have said very few people actually suffer from. Most are just sad about a particular situation. So find out what you're sad about. Find out what you're depressed about, what you're anxious about, and try to tackle that from the root. Now back to replacing weed with something. Again, if you probably have a weed addiction, you have an addictive personality. So we got to be careful not to trade one vice out for another. Don't trade it out for cigarettes. Don't trade it out for alcohol. Trade it out for exercise. Trade it out for a hobby. Trade it out for basketball. Trade it out for a side hustle. There's many healthy alternatives that we can, use our addictive qualities to benefit us, not just getting high all day. So once we actually prove to ourselves that we can go a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month without weed, our mindset has already shifted. It is something that has happened in our brain that has confirmed with us we can survive without weed. And it only gets easier. I'm not saying you don't get urges every now and then. There are some people who have went 6, 12 months, a year and relapse. But in most cases, because you have proven to yourself you can't go this long time without weed, most people don't go back the other direction. They say, I messed up. Usually you feel bad about doing so, and you continue on your path of sobriety. So if your mindset has changed, if your mindset has shifted, it's easy. It's easier to not fall back into this cycle of addiction. So it's just kind of brief. I didn't go fully in depth, but I'm curious to know if you guys have any thoughts about the issue. Did you have to change your mindset to get over weed, or have you found it difficult to change your mindset? Let me know. So until next time, guys, like, subscribe, share, most importantly, comment below, and remember, we are all in this together.